Chapter 51. The atmosphere in the Obsidian Star warehouse was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with phantom attacks. Silas stood with his arms crossed, his gaze a physical weight. Jax fidgeted nervously. Lyra leaned against a weapon rack, her expression unreadable but her posture coiled. Rorik's usual stoicism was replaced by a deep, concerned frown. Kaelen stood before them, having just finished a heavily edited account of his night. He spoke of scouting the foundries, of encountering powerful, corrupted phantoms, and of a desperate fight for survival. He omitted the blight, the rust-sworn, and the true scale of his power leap. He claimed his new, more substantial risen was simply a result of pushing his ability to its limit. The silence that followed was heavier than any rust hulk. It was reckless, Silas finally said, his voice low and dangerous. You went off-grid, into a quarantine zone, without backup. You could have been killed, or worse, captured. And you would have led them right back to us. I needed to know what I was capable of, Kaelen replied, his voice calm. The memory of the Blight's corruption was a fire that had tempered his resolve. He was no longer the scared recruit pleading for shelter. The association is hunting us. The sovereign in the maze knows we exist. Waiting is a slower form of suicide. Us. Lyra spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the room. You keep saying we and us. But you're the one making unilateral decisions that risk all our lives. You went from a liability to a loose cannon. He also came back stronger, Jax interjected, trying to play peacemaker. Look at him, Lyra. He's different. If he can handle the Ironheart Foundries alone, imagine what he can do for the guild. That's the problem, Jax, Lyra shot back, her eyes never leaving Kaelen. We don't have to imagine. He just showed us. He doesn't need us for protection anymore. So what's to stop him from deciding we are a liability and moving on? Or what's to stop him from dragging us into a fight we can't win? Her words hung in the air, voicing the fear that had been festering since the mirror maze. The balance of power had shifted, and the foundation of their fragile alliance was cracking. Chapter 52. Silas held up a hand, silencing them all. The question isn't whether we trust him, he said, his gaze boring into Kaelen. The question is whether we have a choice. He walked over to Kaelen, stopping mere inches away. Lyra's right. You're a loose cannon. But you're our loose cannon. And you're the only weapon we have that might be able to fight the storm that's coming. He gestured around the dilapidated warehouse. This guild was built on survival, on taking the scraps the big players left behind. But the game has changed. We are not scavengers anymore. We are insurgents. And an insurgent cell with a nuclear weapon is still a cell, but it's a hell of a lot more dangerous. He looked at each of them in turn. So here's the new deal. Kaelen, you do not go on solo missions without my explicit authorization. In return, we stop treating you like a child to be protected. We integrate your power into our strategy. We become what the Veil Singer said you needed. Allies. A real team. Not a shield for a secret, but a spear for a war. He turned to Lyra and Jax. That means you two stop treating him like a bomb about to go off. You train with him. You learn to fight alongside his things. You learn his capabilities and his limits, because they are now your capabilities and your limits. Understood? Jax nodded immediately. Lyra held Silas's gaze for a long moment, then gave a single, sharp nod. Understood. Rorik grunted his agreement. Silas looked back at Kaelen. Well, do you accept these terms? Are you part of this guild, or are you just using us? Kaelen met his stare. He saw the pragmatism, the fear, and the desperate hope. These people, for all their flaws and suspicions, were the only anchor he had in a world sliding into chaos. I accept, Kaelen said. I'm part of this guild. Good, Silas said, a grim smile touching his lips. Then your first official act as our spearhead is to help us pass an audition. Chapter 53. The Crimson Howl Guild is hemorrhaging members, Silas explained, pulling up a contract on the main terminal. They bit off more than they could chew with a B-rank dungeon, the Chittering Warrens. It's an insectoid hive. Low-level phantoms, but they number in the thousands. The Howl lost their vanguard and their healer. They are desperate. They've put out an open call for subcontractors to help them clear the first 3 chambers so they can recover their dead and salvage their gear. He pointed to the details. They're offering a flat fee plus a 15% share of all recovered loot and cores. It's good money. But more importantly, it's a chance. A chance for what? Jax asked. To get eaten by giant mana-infused ants. A chance to show a mid-tier guild what we can do, Silas said, his eyes gleaming. The Howl has connections. If we impress them, word gets around. We stop being the bottom feeders and start being the reliable specialists you call for messy, unconventional jobs. It builds a reputation that has nothing to do with the association. It builds our own network. He looked at Kaelen. And it's the perfect environment for you. A dungeon swarming with weak but numerous phantoms. You can deploy your Risen without raising too many eyebrows. We'll frame it as a unique summoning contract. You can farm cores to your heart's content, and no one will question a high body count in an insect hive. The Chittering Warrens. The name alone was unsettling. But Silas was right. It was a perfect training ground and a strategic opportunity. What's the catch? Lyra asked, ever the pragmatist. The catch is the Crimson Howl themselves, Silas admitted. Their captain, Goran, is a brute. An A-rank brawler with more ego than sense. He'll be looking down on us the entire time. We'll have to deal with his crap while doing his dirty work. And we have to be perfect. One mistake, and our reputation is mud. Kaelen looked at the schematics of the Warren. A labyrinth of tunnels filled with skitterlings and their larger, more dangerous kin. It was a target-rich environment. I can do it, Kaelen said. My Risen are ideal for swarm control. Then we are in, Silas declared. Jax, accept the contract. We move out at dawn. It's time for Obsidian Star to howl. Chapter 54. The Crimson Howl Guild was everything Silas had warned about. They occupied a sleek, modern compound, and their members wore matching red and black armor. Their captain, Goran, was a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a perpetual scowl. He looked at the battered Obsidian Star transport with undisguised contempt. Silas, Goran grunted as they disembarked. I expected you to send a team, not bring your whole operation. His eyes swept over them, lingering dismissively on Kaelen's E-rank badge. An E-rank? You're kidding me. This is a B-rank clearance, not a daycare trip. This is Kaelen, our sensory and support specialist, Silas said, his voice even but tight. His summoning contract is uniquely suited for hive environments. He'll be handling crowd control. Goran snorted. Summoning? You mean like a few flashy elementals? This isn't a magic show, old man. This is a meat grinder. He gestured to a woman with sharp features and calculating eyes standing beside him. This is Anya, my tactician. You follow her orders without question. Your job is to hold the line in the first chamber while my team pushes forward to secure the recovery site. You keep the skitterlings off our backs. That's it. Don't try to be heroes. Anya gave them a curt, professional nod, but her eyes held a keen intelligence that Goran lacked. She was the real threat, the one who would be watching. They were led to the dungeon gate, a gaping, dark hole in the ground that emitted a constant, chittering noise and the smell of damp earth and formic acid. Stick to the plan, Silas muttered to his team as they geared up. Lyra, you're on high-value target duty. Jax, mapping and flank security. Rorik, you're our rock. Kaelen. He glanced at Kaelen. You know what to do. Just don't overdo it. Kaelen nodded. He could feel the hive's energy, a mindless, chittering hunger. It was a far cry from the profound grief of the Foundries. This was simple. This was consumption. He was good at consumption. Chapter 55. The first chamber of the Chittering Warrens was a vast, domed cavern, its walls honeycombed with thousands of tunnels. The air was thick with the sound of skittering legs and clicking mandibles. The moment they entered, the walls seemed to come alive. Skitterlings, phantom insects the size of large dogs, poured from the holes in a ceaseless, churning tide. They were individually weak, D-rank at best, but their numbers were terrifying. Form a perimeter. Anya's voice crackled over the comms. Howl team, push forward. Obsidian Star, hold this position. Goran and his A-rank team, a blur of fire and steel, carved a path through the swarm, disappearing into a large tunnel on the far side of the chamber. The moment they were gone, the full force of the hive focused on the remaining 5. Rorik planted his shield, the tide of insects breaking against it like a wave. Lyra's rifle cracked again and again, each shot taking down a larger Stinger variant that tried to flank them. Jack's was a whirlwind, his short sword a silver arc, but he was being slowly overwhelmed. Kaelen, now would be good. Jax yelled, bisecting two skitterlings at once. Kaelen took a breath. This was his stage. He didn't deploy his entire army. He started small, strategic. Risen, deploy. Squad theater. A group of 5 risen corpse rats materialized. But they didn't just charge. Under Kaelen's precise mental command, they formed a skirmish line, using hit-and-run tactics to draw swarms away from Jax and into Lyra's firing lanes. It was coordinated, tactical. Anya, who was monitoring the battle from a rear position, did a double take. What kind of summons are those? They're working together. Then Kaelen deployed his Rust Sworn. The 4 humanoid risen appeared in a phalanx formation in front of Rorik, their spectral shields adding a second, mobile wall. They fought with the disciplined precision of veteran soldiers, their attacks clean and efficient. The pressure on the front line eased immediately. By the system. Jax breathed, watching the shadowy soldiers hold the line. He's got an army. Chapter 56. For 10 minutes, they held. Kaelen's risen were relentless, fearless, and perfectly coordinated. He was a conductor, and the chamber was his orchestra. He used shared sensors through Smoke, who was perched high on a stalactite, giving him a bird's-eye view of the entire battle. He could see swarms forming in the tunnels before they even emerged. Lyra, tunnel at 2 o'clock, 10 seconds, he said, his voice calm. Lyra, without question, adjusted her aim. When the swarm emerged, she was ready, her shots thinning their numbers before they could join the main horde. Jax, fall back 3 steps. A pack is circling behind the central rock formation. Jax obeyed, and as he moved back, a group of skitterlings that had been sneaking around were exposed and cut down by his waiting blade. He was not just controlling his risen, he was commanding the entire battlefield. Silas watched, his axe momentarily still, a look of stunned pride on his face. This was beyond anything he had imagined. Anya was silent on the comms, but Kaelen could feel her intense focus on him. She wasn't just seeing a summoner, she was seeing a master tactician. The true test came when a new phantom emerged from the largest tunnel, a brood queen, a sea-rank creature the size of a car, its abdomen pulsating as it laid clusters of glowing eggs that hatched into new skitterlings almost instantly. Priority target. Anya barked. That queen will overwhelm us. Lyra fired, but the queen's chitinous armor deflected the round. Rorik was pinned down by the endless swarm. They couldn't reach it. Kaelen. Silas said, a question and an order in one word. Kaelen nodded. He recalled his skirmishing rats and focused his will on his 4 Rust Sworn. He gave them a complex series of commands. The 4 shadowy knights broke formation. 2 of them used their shields to create a wedge, bulldozing a path through the lesser insects. The other 2 followed, their spectral swords a blur. They ignored the skitterlings biting at their heels, their sole focus the brood queen. They reached the queen. While one group held off its slashing claws, the other 2 plunged their swords into its vulnerable underbelly. The queen shrieked and collapsed, its egg sac rupturing. The constant stream of new skitterlings ceased. The chamber fell silent, the remaining insects scattering back into their tunnels. The fight was over. Chapter 57. Goran and his team returned 20 minutes later, hauling the bodies of their fallen comrades and a few bags of salvaged gear. They stopped at the entrance to the chamber, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and shock. The cavern was a charnel house of dissolving phantom parts, but the Obsidian Star team stood unscathed, barely looking winded. Kaelen's risen had been recalled, leaving no trace but the evidence of their effectiveness. What happened here? Goran asked, his bravado gone. We held the line, Silas said simply, wiping his axe clean. As agreed. Anya stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Kaelen. Your summoner, his constructs. They're autonomous? They follow tactical commands. They're an extension of my will, Kaelen answered vaguely. She means they're badasses, Jack said with a grin, clapping Kaelen on the back. Told you he was useful. Goran looked from the clear battlefield to his own battered team. The disparity was humiliating. He grunted, a sound of forced acceptance. The job's done. Your payment will be transferred. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Silas. You're not what I thought, Silas. Maybe there's a place for a specialized team like yours. I'll be in touch. It was the closest thing to respect they would ever get from Goran. As the Crimson Hell team departed, Anya lingered for a moment, her gaze still on Kaelen. It wasn't suspicious anymore. It was calculating, appreciative. She gave him a slight, respectful nod before following her captain. Back in their transport, the mood was electric. Did you see his face? Jax crowed. Goran looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. We aced it. Quiet, Jax, Silas said, but he was smiling. He looked at Kaelen. That was impressive. You didn't just control your power. You weaponized it. You commanded the whole field. Lyra was quiet, cleaning her rifle. Finally, she spoke without looking up. The coordination was flawless. You saved my ass twice in there. She glanced at him. Okay. I'm in. For real this time. It was the highest praise he was likely to get from her. Kaelen felt a strange sensation. It wasn't the cold satisfaction of power he'd felt in the Foundries. It was warmer. It was the feeling of being part of a team that was finally, truly, fighting together. He had proven his worth. Not just as a weapon, but as a leader. Chapter 58. The payment from the Crimson Hell job was substantial. For the first time, Obsidian Star wasn't just scraping by. Silas invested in better gear, upgraded their comms, and even put a down payment on a less conspicuous transport vehicle. But the real value was in the reputation. Within days, other offers trickled in. Not from giant guilds, but from other mid-tier organizations who had heard about the swarm specialists who had bailed out the Crimson Howl. Contracts for dungeon clearing, perimeter defense, and hazardous environment scouting started to fill their schedule. They were becoming known. It was exactly what Silas wanted, but it also meant more eyes. Kaelen used his share of the pay and the dozens of skittling cores he'd covertly collected to expand his army. With his C-rank authority, the binding was effortless. He now commanded a full legion of 30 Risen, a corps of 4 C-rank Rustsworn, a dozen D-rank Wisps and Enhanced Rats, and 14 new D-rank Skittling, Shadows, Swift, 6-legged scouts perfect for reconnaissance. He spent his evenings in the guild's training area, not just drilling his Risen, but integrating them with the team. He and Lyra practiced combined arms attacks, with his Risen flushing targets into her sightlines. He and Rorik worked on shield wall tactics, his Sworn complementing the Giant's immovable defense. He and Jax developed scouting patterns, with his Skittlings and Smoke acting as forward observers. They were becoming a single, cohesive unit. The spear Silas had envisioned was being forged in the fires of practice and shared success. Yet, Kaelen couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. He was stronger, his guild was thriving, but the memory of the blight and the warning about other sovereigns gnawed at him. They were building a nice little fortress on the edge of an abyss. Chapter 59. The message arrived encrypted on Silas's private terminal 2 weeks after the Chittering Warrens. It wasn't from a guild. The sender was anonymous. It contained a single sentence, "The Smith seeks the Crow," and a set of coordinates. A location deep in the abandoned industrial sector, not far from the Ironheart Foundries. Silas called an immediate meeting. "It's a trap," he stated flatly. "Probably," Lyra agreed. "The Association, or another sovereign. They're luring you out, Kaelen." "Or it's the real thing," Jax countered. "The Veilsinger told you to find the Smith. What if they found you first?" "The risk is too high," Silas said. "We ignore it." Kaelen stared at the coordinates on the screen. He could feel a pull, a resonance similar to what he'd felt from the Blight, but different. More constructive. Less corrosive. "The Veilsinger said I couldn't fight this war alone," Kaelen said quietly. "It mentioned the Weavers and the Smith specifically. If this is the Smith, it could be our chance to get a real ally. Someone who understands what I am." "And if it's a trap, we walk into it with our eyes open," Lyra said, surprising everyone. She looked at Kaelen. "You've proven you can handle yourself. And we are a better team now. We go in prepared. Heavily armed. We scout the location for days beforehand. We set our own traps." Silas looked from Lyra's determined face to Kaelen's resolved one. He sighed, running a hand over his face. "I'm going to regret this." He pointed a finger at Kaelen. "We do this my way. Extreme caution. We treat it as a high-risk infiltration mission. If anything, and I mean anything, feels off, we abort immediately. Understood? Understood, Kaelen said. The decision was made. They would answer the call. The Ashen Crow was being summoned. It was time to see who was on the other end. Chapter 60. For 3 days, they observed the location. It was a derelict auto body shop, seemingly empty. Lyra and Kaelen's Risen Scouts detected no heat signatures, no mana fluctuations, and no signs of an ambush. It was just quiet. On the 4th night, they moved in. Silas, Rorik, and Jax took up overwatch positions on nearby rooftops. Lyra and Kaelen approached the main entrance, cloaked in darkness. "This is it," Lyra whispered, her rifle scanning the empty street. "You ready?" Kaelen nodded, his veil shroud active, his connection to his risen army a taut wire in his mind. He pushed the door open. The interior was not what he expected. It wasn't a ruin. It was a workshop. A single, bare bulb hung over a pristine, organized workbench covered in tools he didn't recognize. Crystalline screwdrivers, wires that pulsed with light, and delicate instruments that seemed to be made of solidified shadow. And in the center of the room, his back to them, stood a man. He was short and stocky, with powerful arms covered in intricate, glowing tattoos that resembled circuit diagrams. He was humming as he worked on a complex device, his hands moving with impossible speed and precision. He spoke without turning around, his voice a low, rumbling baritone that vibrated in the still air. "Took you long enough," the man said. "I was beginning to think the stories about the Ashen Crow were exaggerated." He finally turned, wiping his hands on an oily rag. His eyes were a startling, bright blue, and they held a deep, ancient weariness. He looked at Kaelen, and a slow smile spread across his face. "The name's Dorian," he said, "but you can call me the Smith. I hear you're in the market for a proper weapon. And let me tell you, son, the one the system gave you is a piece of junk." He gestured to the paradox core in Kaelen's chest, which he shouldn't have been able to see. "Let's talk about an upgrade."